Where in your house right now, there's a drain slowly filling with the exact thing that will flood your kitchen floor in December, and you cannot see it happening. Every plumber in your city wants you to believe the fix costs $300 and takes a stranger with a wrench. But my grandmother solved this same problem with a coin and a bowl of rice for 60 years. So why has nobody told you the drain in your own home has been trying to warn you for months? My name is Suda. I grew up in a small wooden house outside Kanazawa, where the winters are wet and the drains never once backed up. Not in 60 years. Not through 3 typhoons a summer and snow that sat on the roof until March. I have fixed the drains in more than 40 houses in my neighborhood since I was old enough to hold a bucket. And I want to tell you something that will sound strange at first. A blocked drain is never really about the drain. It is about what you put into it every single day without thinking, and about one small habit almost nobody in the West was ever taught. I did not learn this from a plumber. I learned it standing next to my grandmother at the kitchen sink when I was 7 years old, watching her do something with a spoon of cooking oil that I did not understand until I was nearly 30. Let me tell you where I went wrong first, because I think you will recognize yourself in it. When I moved to my first apartment on my own, I cooked the way I thought everyone cooked. I fried my vegetables, I poured the leftover oil straight down the sink, I ran hot water after it, and told myself that was enough. 6 months later, the water in my kitchen sink stood there for a full minute before it drained even a little. I called a plumber. He opened the trap under my sink and pulled out something the color of old candle wax, thick as a fist, wrapped around a tangle of rice grains and vegetable skins. He charged me the equivalent of $40, and he told me something I have never forgotten. He said, "You did not make a mistake. You just never learned the one rule every grandmother in this country already knows." I stood in my little kitchen that evening, feeling foolish, $40 poorer, holding a rag full of something I never wanted to see again. And I remember thinking, nobody ever sat me down and taught me this. Not my school, not my landlord, not the pamphlet that came with the apartment. It was a piece of ordinary household knowledge that used to pass from a grandmother to a granddaughter over the sink, and somewhere along the way, in my generation, in the rush of city living and takeout containers and nobody having time to stand at the stove and watch, it simply stopped getting passed down. That is really why I am telling you this, not because I am special. Because I almost lost it too, and I only got it back by accident, standing in my own flooded kitchen at 11 o'clock at night with a very patient plumber trying not to laugh at me. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. So here is the rule. And it is the whole reason Japanese homes almost never call a plumber for a blocked drain. Oil is not a liquid once it cools. It is a solid waiting to happen. The moment hot cooking oil hits cold pipe water, it starts turning back into fat, the same way butter goes hard in the fridge. It does not flow away. It clings to the inside of the pipe, one thin layer at a time, and every single thing you rinse down after it, rice, coffee grounds, a stray noodle, sticks to that layer like a fly to fly paper. Within a year, you have built a wall inside your own pipe with your own hands, and you never even saw it happening. That is the trap almost every household falls into, and it is the question I want you sitting with as we go further. Because once you understand this one thing, the rest of what I am going to show you will make complete sense, and you will never look at your kitchen sink the same way again. Here is something that will surprise you. This habit is not a modern trick some influencer figured out. It goes back to the Edo period, hundreds of years before plastic pipe or city sewer lines ever existed, when Japanese towns ran their wastewater through open channels called dobu that ran right past every home, and every household on that channel was responsible for keeping their own stretch of it clear. Because if one house let their fat and scraps pile up, the whole street flooded, not just their own kitchen. Keeping your drain clear was never a private chore. It was a small daily act of respect for your neighbors. And that idea, that your drain is not only yours, got baked into how families raised their children for generations, long after the open channels were paved over and hidden underground. That is the piece almost nobody outside the culture ever hears. And it is the reason this habit survived when so many other old customs did not. It was never framed as plumbing maintenance. It was framed as manners. Now compare that to how the problem gets framed where you live. Somewhere along the way, an entire industry grew up around the idea that a blocked drain is an emergency you cannot prevent, only react to. Drain cleaning companies advertise same-day service, and a single visit for a stubborn kitchen clog can run you anywhere from $150 to $400 depending on where you live and how deep the blockage sits. The bottles of chemical drain opener on the store shelf next to it promise the same fix for $15, but ask any plumber privately and most of them will tell you those chemicals are hard on old pipe joints. They can eat through rubber seals over repeated use, and they do nothing at all to stop the next clog from forming, because they never touch the habit that caused it in the first place. You are paying again and again to treat a symptom, while the actual cause sits completely untouched in your kitchen routine. That is the sharp difference I want you to hold on to. One path is expensive, occasional, and reactive. It waits for the crisis and then charges you for the privilege of fixing it. The other path is nearly free, takes minutes a week, and prevents the crisis from ever forming in the first place. My grandmother never once needed same-day emergency service in 60 years of cooking in that kitchen, and it was not because her pipes were newer or better than yours. Her pipes were older than most of the plumbing in your house right now. It was because she was never fighting the drain after the fact. She was quietly on good terms with it every single day. That is the counterintuitive truth underneath everything I'm about to show you. The problem was never really about pipes at all. It was about a relationship, the one between a household and the water leaving it. And once you understand that, you stop looking for a stronger chemical and you start looking for a better habit, which is exactly what my grandmother handed down to me. One small, unglamorous step at a time. So what do you do instead if you cannot pour the oil down the drain the way everyone else does? This is where most people get it backwards. They think the fix is a stronger chemical, something in a purple bottle that promises to eat through anything, and they pour it in once a year when the smell gets bad and think the job is done. That is expensive. It is hard on old pipes, and it treats the drain like an enemy you punish instead of a system you maintain. My grandmother never bought a single bottle of drain cleaner in her life, and her kitchen sink outlived 3 houses. The real trick is not a stronger poison. It is catching the fat before it ever becomes liquid enough to travel, and doing 5 minutes of maintenance every single week instead of one expensive emergency every few years. The industry wants you to think of your drain as something you fix. The truth my family has always lived by is that a drain is something you tend, the same way you tend a garden a little bit, often, before there is ever a problem to see. That is the whole shift in thinking, and once you make it, the actual steps are almost embarrassingly simple. The first thing I want you to do is called the oil ball, or abura dango, in my grandmother's kitchen. You keep an old empty can beside your stove, any can will do, a coffee tin, a soup can, and every time you finish frying, you pour the leftover hot oil into that can, instead of the sink. You let it sit there and cool. Within a week or two, especially in a cold kitchen, that oil turns into a soft, solid mass, the abura dango, the oil dumpling. Once it is firm, you scrape it into your household trash, wrapped in a little newspaper so it does not leak. This one habit alone stops almost all of the buildup before it ever starts, because the oil that causes the blockage never even touches your pipe. It costs you nothing. It takes 30 seconds after each meal. The second thing is the strainer, what we call the gomi ami, the mesh net that sits in the mouth of the drain. Every kitchen sink and every bathroom drain in a Japanese home has one, a small basket of fine mesh that catches every grain of rice, every vegetable peel, every strand of hair before it goes anywhere near the pipe. You empty it after every single use, straight into the bin. It takes less time than it takes to say the word. Most Western sinks do not come with one installed, but you can buy a stainless mesh strainer that fits any standard drain for about $2 at a hardware store, and it will do more for your pipes than any chemical you could pour down after the fact. The third thing is the weekly flush, and this is the part almost nobody outside my country has ever heard of. Once a week, on the same day, my grandmother would boil a full kettle of water, and while it was still close to boiling, she would pour half a cup of baking soda straight into the drain, followed slowly by the hot water, then a half cup of plain vinegar, then the rest of the kettle. You will hear it fizz and hiss under the sink. That reaction breaks down the thin film of fat that the ball and the strainer could not catch before it ever has the chance to build into a wall. It smells a little sharp for a minute, and then it is gone. Total cost, maybe 10 cents of baking soda and vinegar you already own. Total time, 4 minutes, most of which is just waiting for the kettle. The fourth thing, and this is the one that surprises people the most, is the water seal check. And it has nothing to do with clogs at all. It has to do with the smell that tells you a clog is already forming somewhere you cannot see. Every drain has a bend in the pipe underneath it called a trap, shaped like the letter S or the letter P, and that bend is always supposed to be sitting full of water. That standing water is a seal. It blocks sewer gas from rising up into your kitchen. If you go on a trip for 2 weeks and come home to a strange smell near a drain you rarely use, a laundry room floor drain, a guest bathroom sink, it usually is not a clog at all. It is simply that the water in the trap evaporated while you were gone, and the seal broke. My grandmother taught me to check this with an old 1 yen coin. You lower it gently into the drain opening on a piece of thread, and if it does not touch water within about an inch, you know the trap has run dry and you simply pour in a cup of water to reseal it. No plumber, no chemical, no charge, just water going back where it belongs. In any drain you do not use every day, once a month, pour a cup of water down it just to keep that seal alive. One trick my grandmother added to this that I have never seen written down anywhere: if a drain smells even after you have reset the water seal, she would drop in 1 thin slice of fresh lemon peel and let it sit for a few minutes before running the tap. The natural oil in the peel cuts straight through the last trace of grease film on the pipe wall right at the opening, the part a kettle of soda and vinegar sometimes cannot fully reach, and it leaves the whole kitchen smelling faintly clean instead of like a chemical bathroom spray. It costs you a lemon you were probably going to use for cooking anyway. And here is one more. A small thing that ties all of it together. In the entryway of almost every Japanese home, there is a floor drain outside near the gutter downspout. And once a season, at the change of the weather, the whole family goes out together and lifts the small metal grate and clears out the leaves and grit that have gathered in the basin underneath it by hand. It takes 10 minutes, and it is the reason the street almost never floods outside these homes, even in the heaviest rain of the year. So when you put all of this together, the oil ball, the mesh strainer, the weekly flush, the coin check on the trap, the seasonal clearing of the outdoor grate, you start to see what my grandmother actually knew that the plumber industry never wanted widely spread. A blocked drain is not bad luck, and it is not old pipes. It is the slow record of 1,000 small choices, and every one of those choices can be reversed with something that already sits in your kitchen cupboard. This is not really about plumbing at all when you step back far enough. It is about the difference between fixing a crisis after it arrives and quietly preventing it before it ever has the chance to begin. And that habit of mind, once you build it into your week, spreads into everything else you take care of in a home. Think about what a single flooded kitchen actually costs a family. And I do not just mean the plumber's bill. I mean the warped floorboard that has to be replaced months later. I mean, the afternoon you lose standing in wet socks, moving pots under a leak instead of doing anything you had planned. I mean, the small argument that starts in a kitchen because one person feels like they are always the one dealing with the mess. A blocked drain is such a small, unglamorous thing to worry about, and that is exactly why almost nobody worries about it until the day it becomes the only thing anyone in the house is worried about. My grandmother used to say the house tells you what it needs long before it breaks, if you are willing to listen to it once a week instead of once a decade, and I did not understand what she meant until I was standing in that plumber's shoes, watching him pull that mass of old fat out of my own pipe, and realizing the sink had probably been draining a little slower every week for months, quietly asking for 5 minutes of my attention, and I never once looked down and noticed. There is a version of you, watching this right now, who is going to close this video and forget every single word of it by tomorrow afternoon, and there is a version of you who is going to walk into the kitchen tonight and set an old can by the stove. I cannot tell you which one you will be. I can only tell you which one my grandmother would have been, because I watched her be that person for 60 years, and I never once, not one single time in my whole childhood, heard her complain about a blocked drain. Not because she was lucky, but because she never let herself be surprised by something she could have tended to a week earlier. So here is what I want you to do tonight, before you go to bed. Find an old can, set it by your stove, and the next time you fry anything, pour the leftover oil into it instead of the sink. That is the whole first step, and it costs you nothing but a can you probably already have. Then this weekend, boil a kettle, find the baking soda in your cupboard, and give every drain in your house the treatment I just showed you. Tell me in the comments which drain in your house has been giving you trouble, and tell me if you notice a difference by next week, because I read every one of them, and I want to know how it goes for you. Next time, I want to show you the one thing my grandmother kept in a small dish by the stove that kept every fly out of her kitchen for an entire summer without a single spray can, using nothing but 2 ingredients most people already throw away. And I promise you will not believe how simple it is until you see it with your own eyes.